Good evening, Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And I'd also like to welcome the press as well as our guest, Tiffany from KPMG. As we begin tonight's evening, we take time to acknowledge and recognize that today is National Indigenous Peoples Day. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we are gathered is a tradition community. We say miigwech to thank Indigenous people for taking care of this land from time immemorial. We are all called and respect. Prior to beginning this evening's agenda, I would ask that each councillor who is present via this video conferencing to answer the roll call when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Summers.
Present.
Councillor B. Dunbar.
Present.
Councillor J. Dunbar.
Present.
Councillor Wells.
Present.
Councillor Roy.
Present.
And Councillor Pastorero.
Present.
Thank you. On behalf of the Town of Blind River Mayor and Council, I would like to congratulate all of our students who are graduating from kindergarten, grade 8, high school, and university. This is truly a milestone on life's journey. To those who have decided to go on to college or university, we look forward to hearing your progress and wish you the very best in your endeavors. To those who are not certain which path to follow, take your time, as these decisions are life-changing. And a reminder to all of us that it is still June Participation Month, and right now we're in 13th place. But like the story of the tortoise and the hare, there's still time to up our game. Please go to the Participation website to register for the Community Challenge under the infamous P0R1B0 postal code, so that your physical activities will bring our little town that much closer to winning $100,000. We know we can do this, Blind River, and we're counting on you to show your strength. And hot off the press, I learned today that Cameco employees celebrated 15 years of being accident-free. This is a huge milestone. Heartfelt congratulations are being sent out to all the employees at Cameco's Blind River Refinery. Now, without further ado, turning to tonight's agenda, I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor J. Dunbar. Be it resolved that Council approve the agenda, the addendum to the agenda, and the closed meeting agenda as presented. All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we can move on. I have a motion from Councillor Roy, seconded by Councillor Pastorero. Be it resolved that Council adopt the minutes of the regular Council meeting of June 7th, 2021, the minutes of the public meeting held June 7th, 2021, and the meeting minutes of the special Council meeting held June 3rd, 2021, as presented. All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And is there any business which Council may wish to talk about as a result of these minutes that were circulated? Seeing none, we will move on to the public presentation, and I would like to welcome Tiffany Shesetico, and I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Tiffany, you are definitely well known to us, and KPMG is to be thanked for the 2020 financial statements. And Tiffany, I will turn the floor over to you, and I'm sure you're going to be sharing your screen.
You know the routine by this point, I'm sure. Okay.
Yes, I do.
All right. Okay, just give me 1 second, everybody, while I get my screen sharing up there. Now, before we go on, can everybody see my screen all right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right, everybody, here we are presenting the 2020 statements. And first of all, just starting off by saying thanks so much to Sue, who I see on the meeting as well. You'll notice that every year we keep on getting these wrapped up sooner, and that is really as a result of Sue's great hard work on getting the audit and the financials to us. So here we go. Let's go through what happened in the year. So the first few pages that you see in this presentation, consistent with previous years, are the independent auditor's report. These financial statements are prepared in accordance with the public sector accounting standards, which are required for municipalities. You'll notice that there's no change in the auditor's report as compared to what you would have seen in previous years. And just a few things to note. So an unqualified, or commonly known as a clean audit opinion, which means that these financial statements are prepared in accordance with the relevant PSAB standards. So that includes all of the measurement principles as well as the note disclosures that are required. We have calculated materiality as we did in previous years based on a percentage of your expenses. Just to note, in the current year, one thing that was a little bit different, obviously, and I think we've heard too much about it, but the pandemic did also have to be factored in when we were going through our audit approach. Reason for that is, typically speaking, in an audit process, you would have relied upon your previous year's results and used that as a starting point. Couldn't really do that as much in the pandemic because there could have been changes, you know, for recreation facilities being closed or not the similar type of activity as you would have seen in previous years. So we did take a look at what the current year's operating expenses were and utilize that to go through our materiality calculations. We would have discussed them with Sue that exceeded $17,550, and they would have had to have been corrected in the financial statements. There are no uncorrected audit differences to note. Everything has been included there. And of course, provided that council approves the statements today, they'll be signed off and final with a date as of June 21st. This is also your consistent statement of management's responsibility that you see in each of your annual financial statements. Think of this just meaning that management does have a good process in place to ensure that the financial results are appropriately prepared, and that's signed off in the final financial statements as well. All right, so audit procedures, no real change in the current year in terms of what we would have focused on. Number one area being revenue, accounts receivable, deferred revenue. Next area being operating expenses and accounts payable. Finally, and then capital. When you combine all of those four areas up, you really do combine to get great coverage on all of the areas of the financial statements. We do some control testing in certain areas to make sure that things are appropriately, in compliance with the controls that are in place. The remainder of the audit and the majority of the audit is done substantively, where we vouch to confirmations and agree to third-party evidence. What was new this year is a new auditing standard actually relating to estimates. We did need to do some additional documentation with respect to your landfill obligation. That was the only item that was deemed to be a significant estimate in the current year. All right, so let's get on to what everybody really is focused on, the numbers. So these would be a snapshot as of a point in time being the year end of December 31st of 2020. So looking at your financial assets, you can slight decrease in your total financial assets as a whole, but first of all, you can see an increase in your cash balance. So up to 4.9 million at the end of December. Very good cash flow from operating activities. So almost a $4.5 million increase at the end of the year. That was utilized to fund $2.4 million of capital purchases in the year and your repayment of your debt. The remainder of the amount is sitting in your cash balance, and that's really as a result of a change in your working capital balances in the year. Taxes receivable, they have increased a little bit year over year. We'll look at the breakdown in terms of the aging just on the next page. Accounts receivable as a whole, 2.1 last year, 2.1 million, just over 1 million at the end of the current year. There were some additional grants included in the balance prior year. So the Connecting Link grant was one of them, about $450,000, and your final OMPF payment about $665,000. So those two large amounts were outstanding last year. No similar amounts outstanding at the end of 2020, hence why you see that decrease in that balance as of the end of the year. And then the last item here is your related party advances. So this is your amounts that were repaid from North Shore Power Group in the year. So it was about $563,000 that was repaid from them in the year. Composition of your taxes receivable. So while there was a bit of an increase, it's still pretty consistent with the prior year. So we always look at it, what are your taxes receivable as a percentage of your tax levy, just to give a quick look at whether or not there's any concerning trends. So one thing I think I've mentioned to all of you previously is, we always take a look at what's in current, because the more likely you are to collect, the more current those balances are. So you can see that while there is an increase, you can see that current balance increasing there. You can see a bit of an increase in your prior year 3 taxes receivable. No change though noted or required in the allowance in the current year. We do complete an assessment where we say, okay, this is the taxes receivable owing, this is the impact assessed value of the property. Let's look and see if there's any exposure to the town, and we would consider whether or not any additional allowances are required. Number one question, I think we've talked about this a few years, is how does that stack up elsewhere in the north? I would say in all of the municipalities I work with, it tends to range from, I would say, around 7 to 20%. 20% obviously on the higher end of the range and not really wanting to get to that point. So, but I would say that overall this year, we did see an increase in all of our municipalities aging and taxes receivable. And I think that, some of the perhaps COVID related measures that might have been taken earlier in the year had just caused some sliding in those balances, but nothing really to be concerned with when you're seeing that sort of a percentage of your levy. All right, then on to your financial liabilities. So you can see financial liabilities are down a bit to 33.5 million at the end of 2020. So accounts payable has decreased as of the end of the year. That's mainly just as a result of payments to suppliers. So depending on when your checks are cut, depending on how much work you have going on at the end of the year, that accounts payable number will fluctuate. So you can see there just a lower amount owing to suppliers as of the end of the year, lower amount of holdbacks payable at the end of the year, which caused that decrease there. Deferred revenue is down a bit as well to just over 1.1 million. So it was some additional use of some of your OSIF grants that had been outstanding from the previous year. So about $908,000 outstanding at the start of the year, and then about $926,000 spent. So you can see that bit of that drawdown in that balance in the year. From a debt perspective, no new debt to note in the current year. You just see the repayments noted, which is just your principal reduction going down. And then lastly, your landfill closure and post-closure liability. So that did change. The more you use the landfill, the higher that obligation is going to get. Just as the capacity goes up, so does the obligation to do things in the future relating to that. So just think of it as that, as you use it, you're going to have an increase in that obligation. Obviously, those amounts, however, are funded when those expenditures are taken place at a future point in time, aside from the amounts that have been set aside in reserve for that obligation in the future. And then the last item to really speak about on the balance sheet is your capital assets. So you can see your capital assets here. they're down slightly to 47.5 million at the end of December. And that's just as a result of your additions being slightly lower than your amortization expense for the year. So 2.4 million in your expenditures, just over 3 million in your amortization. So what did you spend the funds on in the current year? There was some roof work to note, roads resurfacing completed, some work at the marina, an off-road bowl, the boiler project at the arena, some sidewalk improvements, and then a significant number of just miscellaneous additions that were all small individually, but did accumulate to just over 800,000 at the end of the year. Okay, moving on to the statement of operations. So think of this, all of your transactions from January 1st of 2020 to December 31st of 2020. So I always think of this when you're looking at a calendar year, you had about 2.5 months of regular operations, and then you had the pandemic impact the tail end of March, and then for the remainder of the year. So taking a look at what happened in your revenue, you can see that your total revenue is down to 14.4 million as of the end of December. You might remember in 2019, there was a significant amount of modernization dollars that were received by municipalities. So there was about $630,000 in provincial grant revenue that was received in 2019, and then no corresponding amount was received in 2020. Of course, there were some COVID-related funds, your Safe Restart funding and things like that, that would have been received in 2020, and the amounts that have been used have been taken into income. Your federal grants are down, and that's just as a result of using less gas tax dollars for your capital purchases in the year. So that's the driver of that change there. A slight increase in your tax rates you can see your increase in your taxation revenue to 6.2 million as of the end of 2020. And then for the most part, your other and your user fees, they're pretty consistent on a year-over-year basis, not really too much to really note there. Moving on to your expenses, you can see a corresponding, a drop in revenue and a corresponding drop in expenses in the current year. So about 66,000 or so is what your total expenses dropped in 2020. So I guess a few things just to note. So number one, your general government expenditures are up. I did want to note, though, that the ministry in the provincial reporting did mandate that any of your costs relating to COVID does sit in your general government. There was a specific account that they required those costs to be in. So anything that the town would have been spending there would have been sitting in your general government expenses. In addition, there was some spending for some asset management planning and an increase in salaries and benefits in that caption as well. Your environmental is up to 3 million at the end of 2020. Just some additional material costs, some additional hydro costs to note in which is causing that expense increase. Recreation and culture, I don't think a surprise to anybody there. Lower salary and benefit costs noted there. Certain closures as a result of the pandemic would have been noted in the year. So that's why you would be seeing that decrease in those expenses. And then for the remainder of the items, your protection to persons and property, your health, social, and family services, and that there's not really much of an increase there. Or much of a change. Planning and development, we are seeing a bit of an increase just given some volume and things like that in 2020 with most of the municipalities that we're working with there. We're getting a lot of years on this slide, but it's important to also get a look at what the spending is on. It's great to look at it by department level, but sometimes it doesn't really paint the true picture of what the funds are being spent on. So you can see your spending on your wages and benefits, a bit of an increase in your wages and benefits there in the current year. Your goods and services, so think of this as your materials and then your contracted services. You know, this really will fluctuate depending on how much capital work you have going on, how much you know, maintenance work you have going on in any given year. That will fluctuate. Some will go to capital, some will stay in operating expenses. You can see this, I like to see this amortization going up. What that means is, as a town, you're investing in your capital. You don't want to see that trend going the other way, because then what happens is you're waiting a number of years to invest in your capital, and then you've probably caught it once it's too late and started to rectify that scenario. And then small amount of financial expenses. Your interest is going down as well, just as a result of the principal repayments on your debt that you have, with no new debt being taken out. The reconciliation of the surplus, I do always like to walk through this. And the reason I do is because last year, there would have been a lot of capital grants or grants with no corresponding expenses necessarily, like your modernization grants. So your surplus in your statements was just over 121,000. I did want to walk through, you know, that there was a lot of capital. So you have to adjust for your amortization, you have to adjust for your capital asset additions. And then I think the other very interesting thing is $1.2 million was put into your reserve set aside by council. So there's some that you had to, you know, the ministry had said, if you didn't spend all your safe restart dollars, go and put them in a particular reserve and that sort of thing. But you had 1.2 million put into your reserves for some landfill expansion work, for future projects, facilities, and then some other specific purpose reserves. So I think I do have the breakdown of that on perhaps the next page or 2 pages after, so you can see what funds were allocated there. So I think it's important to note that the only reason you're sitting there saying that there was a deficit in your operating funds was because you put double the amount of that into your reserves. Had that reserve transfer number come down, then correspondingly there would have been a less of a deficit noted in the year. So maybe I'll just I'll do this and then I'll come back to the other page, because this really does show where those reserves were allocated to. You can see your other specific purpose revenues, and then you can see, you know, your facilities amounts right there, future projects, landfill expansion. Modernization has been drawn down as a result of, you know, use of those funds for various projects that have been ongoing by the town. So the landfill costs here are the amounts that are, you know, going to be recovered in the future when those costs are actually incurred. And this is where you see the increase to that just general deficit in the year. So on an overall basis, did end up in the year with an increase in your accumulated surplus. So to 34.9 million as of the end of 2020. The slide I skipped over was just the changes in your net financial debt. So that's mainly your capital trends that occurred in the year. So that was really the only thing to comment upon there. So in terms of what I would like to, you know, let council know with respect to the audit, at this point in time, our audit is complete and wrapped up. We just need our signed representation letters back from Sue. Of course, once council approves the statements, they'll be finalized. From our perspective, we didn't run into any difficulties in the performance of our audit. It's always a pleasure to work with Sue and her team. We did have to look at the pandemic related impact when we were doing the planning of the engagement. We were able to ensure that we had designed appropriate procedures with considering the pandemic. All audit adjustments have been recorded in the financial statements. There's nothing unrecorded that we would need to note, and no significant internal control deficiencies to bring to your attention as well. So perhaps I'll pause there and I'll go back to any page that anybody would like to ask any questions on, or if there's any comments on the statements. do keep in mind that this is just a cut and paste from the financial statements. So what you would have in the draft financial statements is the same as what would be in this presentation. And there weren't any new accounting standard changes in the year that would have necessitated any changes in the note disclosures or anything like that.
So I'm scrolling down and scrolling up my screen to see if there are any hands rising, and thank you. Are there any questions for Tiffany from council? Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Yes, Tiffany, I'm just curious if there's any more data on the composition of the taxes receivable. If you can go back, 2018, 2017, just to give a better understanding on which way that was going.
Yeah, if you give me one very quick second, I do have the presentation previously, so let me just pull that up. If you just give me 1 minute. Always pressure when you're trying to get it open, getting the presentation open right away. Would be easy if I knew where somebody had moved it to. If I can't get that, I will definitely, I thought it was going to be an easy thing to pop open. If not, that I will send that to you all first thing in the morning. I'll send it through Sue and she can send it on. I'll get the history of the last 4 years and send it over.
Thank you.
No problem.
And Councillor Wells. Oh, your mute button is on, but your hand is raised in the chat.
That was unintentional, Mayor Hagman.
I just wanted to show I'm paying attention here. Are there any other questions for Tiffany? Councillor Roy? No? Okay. Well, Tiffany, you did such a great job presenting tonight. I'd like to thank you for attending our council meeting, and I'd like to give a special shout out to Ms. Dent and her team. Audit time can be a challenging time, and especially when we're working virtually. So congratulations, Sue. You did a great job, and I can see Tiffany smile, so she's agreeing too. Thank you again for coming tonight, Tiffany, and I'm sure if there are any subsequent questions, we know how to reach you.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor B. Dunbar. Be it resolved that council accept the 2020 financial statements as presented by KPMG. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you so much. Moving on to item number 9, introduction and consideration of administrative reports. We have a report from our CAO clerk, read the SEMA proposals, and I will read the motion first, and then any questions that you have for discussion will be brought forward. So this is moved by Councillor Jay Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Roy. Be it resolved that council authorize the CAO to enter into an agreement with SEMA to undertake a full facility/process review for the water treatment plant at a cost of $25,244 plus HST in order to identify efficiencies and enhancements to the drinking water system, and that council authorize the CAO to enter in an agreement with SEMA for the location feasibility study to source the most efficient location to draw Blind River drinking water at a cost of $36,209 plus HST, and that the total amount for these two projects of $61,453 plus HST be drawn from the water reserve account, and that should there be any overages in the project, the CAO may be given authority to draw further funds from the water reserve account with a final reporting from the treasurer at the end of the project. Discussion. Deputy Mayor Summers?
Just my question would be for the last part of that, for the overages. I would like to know that we would be made aware of of this happening, not necessarily giving you carte blanche to just.
Through you, Mayor Hagman, that's a good question and a good point, Deputy Mayor Summers. No, what I intend to do with this project is to keep the infrastructure committee updated as we move through, and then do periodic updates to council. So each month I would report to the infrastructure committee and then do a final overall report of the findings to council, or as major changes may come forward. So if we find some major efficiencies, I will definitely update council as we move forward. But yes, we will definitely keep you all informed. It would just be, especially during the summer when we're down to one meeting, should something arise, that we would be able to move forward and not halt the project any further. It's already the end of June, so we're getting a late start on this. If you recall, the first quote that came back from SEMA was over $700,000. So we've brought it down and phased it over a number of years to do the full EA for the new water source.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And are there any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. Under the service delivery review, we have a report from the CAO clerk, the counseling restructuring survey results, and we will have a motion pending. We've had some excellent comments, and now it's council's turn to comment on the survey and the results of the survey. Deputy Mayor Summers, followed by Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Trying to unmute there, sorry. When we looked at the comments, yes, there were a lot of comments and they were pretty much matched, going either way. The comments that I had felt that were important to know for the public, the fact that there would be a variety of views with the larger council, more diverse is better. Cost savings not significant enough. Several committees that need to be represented by council, and if we lower the number, then it makes the workload much heavier. And just the fact, you know, that we are volunteers and we do spend a lot of time on committees and meetings, and not only attending but also preparing for them. So just those were some comments that that came through that I felt were good comments. And I appreciate that the public is aware of the work that we do. It's not always the best easy work that we do, but we do the best that we can. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Thank you, Mayor Hayden. I just wanted to bring to the attention of the public that there was only 167 surveys filled out. And when you do the math, you know, from a population of 3,400, you're looking at less than 5% of the people answered this survey. And I do respect that the ones who did answer this survey did a good job with their explanations. Even though there were some explanations in there that I don't know which way they meant it to go. So seeing 50%, basically 50-50, I'm happy with the survey, and I'm quite happy to continue on with 6 councillors and 1 mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Postrero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I also thought it was interesting. There was 167 respondents. 41 of those took the time to do personal comments. And so of the 167, there was a large population that didn't do comments. But I found it interesting that the majority of the people that took the time to do comments were actually in favor of the larger council, and the population that was more for the smaller council weren't really represented in the comment section. So they might have just clicked smaller, but didn't take the time to comment. So, and with the 50-50 split, same kind of sentiment is, it's not a first past the post system here. So looking at the majority of the comments, the people that took the time to comment, I was really impressed with their knowledge of what counselors had to do. And the fact that with a reduced council, there would be a workload burden, and that may prohibit people like myself who have a full-time job from participating in politics. So I really respect the fact that they took the time to voice their opinions. And so like Councillor Dunbar stated, I'm definitely in favor of keeping it at the 6 so that more participation in democracy can be presented to all eligible citizens in the community.
Are there any other comments from council? Councillor Roy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to echo everybody else's sentiment on this. I actually, one of my comments made it here, so that's good. Because I did fill in the survey. I think it is important that we speak as well. One of the questions here was they would like to know what council members what they thought about the matter, right? It was number 30, I believe, 39, sorry. So anyways, I think that I'm all in favor with staying the way it is. Status quo works better. I think that you can bounce off more ideas off of 7 people than you can off of, you know, when you reduce it by 2, which would be 5. So, you know, I think that we're leave well enough alone and continue on. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Wills and Councillor B. Dunbar, would you like to comment on this proposal? Councillor Wills?
I think the best way to respond to, thank you, Mayor Hagman, to number 39, as Councillor Roy pointed out, is to have a recorded vote if we're passing the motion this evening.
And that's why I asked you. I was pretty sure you'd want a recorded vote. Thank you, and duly noted. And Councillor B. Dunbar?
Yes, I just want to say what Jennifer was saying earlier, Councillor Postrero was saying earlier. It was actually refreshing to hear the comment, to read the comments and how well they understood what the workload is for councillors. I too think that 6 heads, you know, with the differing ideas coming from 6 people is better than 4, and I'm all in favor of keeping council the way it is.
Sounds great. All right. Well, the nice thing, I'm always the last one to make a comment. I think the nice thing about having the survey was that we show once again that our council is transparent, that we are open to listening to the good people of Blind River, and we do appreciate all the comments that came forward. So thank you to those that did fill out the survey. Surveys are really important to our community. They're important on how we're going forward on different initiatives, this being one of them. Before we go to the recorded vote, I've taken the opportunity, as you'll notice in your council packages, there wasn't anything written down. So I have asked that this be moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Postrero. Be it resolved that council stay with 7 members of council. Is everyone all right with that? Councillor Postrero?
I'm just wondering if it should be clarified that there's 6 councillors and 1 mayor, just so that it's not misinterpreted that there's 7 councillors.
There's no wording on councillors there. I said members of council.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was councillors.
I'll read it again. Be it resolved that council stay with 7 members of council. Is everyone okay with that? I figured we were a team. Okay.
I'm
Councillor
just being,
Foster?
I'm just being nitpicky just because it could be misinterpreted maybe if it could be defined. So seven members.
Would you like including 6 councillors and mayor or something to that effect?
Yes.
Yes, please.
How
Councillors
about-
and one mayor.
I'll put mayor and 6 councillors. We want to make sure we get it right. Okay. Be it resolved that council stay with 7 members of council, including the mayor and 6 councillors.
In favor.
We haven't started yet. Ms. Scott is going to read out the names and I am putting the check marks beside your name. Go ahead, Ms. Scott.
Deputy Mayor Summers,
In favor.
Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar,
In favor.
Councillor Jim Dunbar,
In favor.
Councillor Stephen Wells,
In favor.
Councillor HP Roy,
In favor.
Councillor Jennifer Posterero,
In favor.
and that is carried.
And I say in favor too.
My apologies, Mayor Hagman.
That's okay. Thank you very much, everyone. And moving on to presentation of committee reports. We have none this month at this council meeting, and we have no unfinished business noted. Under correspondence for action from the Director of Facilities and Community Services, we have a request for Canada Day swag. And I have a motion from Councillor B. Dunbar, seconded by Deputy Mayor Summers. Be it resolved that council authorize a one-time donation of Canada Day items to the North Shore Early On Child and Family Center. And is there any discussion on this item? Councillor Roy?
Sorry, but I guess I was on mute. Just wondering what quantity are we giving them? Like we just say one-time donation. I know we can't quantify it in money, but are we giving them cases of product or is there a specific number? I'm just wondering.
I'll let the Director of Facility and Community Services answer your request.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Through you to Councillor Roy, we have a tote of leftover items from previous events. It's just a standard Rubbermaid tote that we moved out when we cleaned out the courthouse. And we have that waiting at Town Hall based on council's decision tonight. Is it
Okay.
like paper odds and ends, pens, stuff like that? Little giveaway items?
Yeah, I was just curious. I'm still voting in favor of this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And Councillor Posterero?
I'm just wondering, I have a question. So with the swag that we give, is it all Canada Day based or is it more like Community Day based? Like is it Blind River centric or Canada Day centric? Just I know with the sentiments, especially after the discovery of the 215 children in Kamloops, that there is a sentiment at this point in time that celebrating Canada Day will be difficult and that we need to be mindful of the fact that several members of our community may not feel included if the swag is just Canada Day centric.
And again, through our Director of Facilities and Community Services.
So through you, Mayor Hagman, to Councillor Posterero, the way this request has been written is based on the inventory that was on hand from previous events. So it is Canada Day, your standard Canada flag based items. A lot of it typically is sent from the federal government to municipalities. We're no stranger to receiving those Perot packs of pins and such. So as we do not have a budget for any festivals this year, this is what we have on hand. As such, this is what Early On has requested from us. So in short, no, it is not a diverse complement of wares to give away. However, this is what is on hand and available as of June 21st in our inventory, as we have no budget to purchase any of these items.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on this request? Seeing none, all in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And under correspondence for information, we have the minutes from the North Shore Power Group Board from April 14th. Are there any questions on these minutes? Seeing none. We also have the information from the North Shore Health Network Annual General Meeting. And are there any questions on these meeting minutes? Councillor Jay Dunbar?
Thank you, Mayor Hageman. Going through this, so they have established now a permanent CEO?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Richard Jolly is the permanent CEO. I attended the AGM this year, and there were a few resignations from the board as well as some new appointees to the board. So they have
great. Yeah. Thank you very much.
No problem. Any other questions? Seeing none. On June 16th, the North Shore Health Network Recruitment Committee meeting was held. Are there any questions on this meeting? Seeing none, I've received no notices of motion, so we'll move on to the introduction and consideration of bylaws. I have a motion moved by Councillor Posterero, seconded by Councillor Jay Dunbar. Be it resolved that Council authorize the Mayor and CAO to sign bylaw 21-34, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Blind River, to set tax ratios, fixed tax rates, and provide for the levy of and collection of municipal and education taxes for the year 2021, was passed in open council this 21st day of June 2021. Questions, comments? All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And there was an opportunity for me to give a report through Algoma Public Health on my tenure in the position as your representative. And does council have any questions of myself and this role that I have on your behalf? And seeing none. We do have an addendum to tonight's agenda, and we have two motions related to that addendum. The first one is a motion moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor B. Dunbar. Be it resolved that council accept the tender from Beamish Construction for Sellers Beach upgrades in the amount of $128,000 as recommended by Tulloch Engineering. And is there any comments, questions on this motion? Councillor Posterero?
I just wanted to question, so with this motion, moving it and passing it, the $128,000 figure, that includes a $100,000 grant. So only the taxpayers would only be on the hook for $28,000. Is that correct?
And I see that Ms. Bittner's screen is lit up, so she's ready to answer.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Posterero. Yes, this is tying up the loose ends from the previous meeting where council allocated the $28,000. And it was highlighted in the previous report too. It was around a 20% contribution, where most grants are a minimum of 25. So again, yes, 100,000 from the feds, $28,000 from the ratepayers to secure close to $160,000 in enhancements towards accessibility and universal outdoor recreation services to prove Blind River's commitment to being a universal and diverse community.
And Councillor Posterero?
Just a quick follow-up. So if ever the funding from the federal portion was revoked, then council would be made aware and that we would revisit it? Because definitely we're excited about this and just with all these funding changes. So if there was ever the possibility that the grant was revoked, then there would be the potential to revisit this.
And I see Ms. Scott has her hand up.
Yes, just through you, Madam Mayor. We've already signed the agreement with the federal government that they will be providing the funds to the municipality. But in any event that that would occur, yes, we would come back to council immediately. But we've already signed the funding agreement with the federal government.
Thank you. And Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I apologize. I haven't refreshed my screen and I was not aware of any addendum. So I guess my question is, when will this work begin? Is there a time frame on this?
And Ms. Bittner, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Jay Dunbar. It was supposed to be today, but Mother Nature decided to give us some rain.
Yes.
So as I understand, the contractors are ready to hit the ground full force on Wednesday, if not tomorrow. So you will notice a lot of activity down at that property this week and over the next week and a half. So it is ready for the volunteers in July.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And are there any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And the second motion under the addendum is moved by Councillor Pastorero, seconded by Councillor B. Dunbar. Be it resolved that Council authorize the mayor and CAO clerk to sign bylaw 20-35, being a bylaw of the corporation of the town of Blind River, to enter into an agreement with Beamish Construction for the Sellers Beach upgrades, was passed in open council this 21st day of June 2021. All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And that completes the public part of our meeting to this point. I have a motion from Councillor Jay Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Pastorero. Be it resolved that council go into the closed meeting at 7:51 p.m. in accordance with Section 239 of the Municipal Act in order to address matters pertaining to litigation and legal matters. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried, and we will be back following the closed meeting. Thanks, everyone. See you on the other side. And welcome back, Blind River. This is the second portion of our council meeting, and I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that council resume the open meeting at 8:24 p.m. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And council discussed litigation or potential litigation, including matters before the administrative tribunals, and also advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And moving forward, I have a motion from Councillor Roy, seconded by Councillor B. Dunbar. Be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and CAO clerk to sign bylaw 21-36, being a bylaw of the corporation of the town of Blind River, to adopt the minutes of the meeting of June 21st, 2021, the minutes of the special meeting held June 3rd, 2021, and the minutes of the public meeting held June 7th, 2021, was passed in open council this 21st day of June, 2021. All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. And last but not least, I have a motion from Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Roy. Be it resolved that council adjourn at 8:25 p.m. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you, everyone. And just a reminder that we have our next meeting in July. So we'll see you mid-July. And in the meantime, let's hope for warmer weather. Have a good night.